Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. On this segment, I want to revisit the selection of the 50 greatest athletes of all time, black athletes of all time. 2017 marks 50 years. Wow, man, you wonder, where did the time go? Marks 50 years since I brought the first pro athlete, NBA Hall of Famer Dave Bing, and voted one of the 50 greatest NBA players of all time into the community to reach back and enhance the growth of inner city kids. In August 2017, a group calling themselves the Survey Monkey and the Undefeated of ESPN teamed up to select the 50 greatest black athletes of all time. It was a gross injustice to the rich history of the black athlete. This was monkey business with a bunch of monkeys who didn't have a clue. It was the blind leading the blind. My question, how can anyone pick the 50 greatest black athletes in one survey swoop? To be fair, you would have to divide the survey into three 50-year segments starting with 1900 to 1950 for the first 50 athletes, and 1950 to 2000 for the second 50 athletes. The athletes born between 2000 and 2050 will just have to wait their turn and see if they stand the test of time, especially if you're going to measure their greatness on player domination, impact, and community service. By that criteria alone, there is no way you can pick Michael Jordan over Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, or Jackie Robinson. Jordan's impact in the community was ground zero. I was not surprised that Major League Baseball owners picked him and Derek Jeter to join their good old boys club as the first black minority owners. Neither one will have the final word or control. There is a report that Jeter had to ante up $25 million and a team reported worth over $1 billion. That's like a mosquito landing on the butt of an elephant. The elephant does not even know that he's there. The report says Jordan is mostly lending his name. The sale is not yet final. The barriers of racism were completely different in the first 50 years, and the same can be said of the second 50 years and the third 50 years for the black athlete. The problem? It is evident that the Survey Monkey and the Undefeated of ESPN, who teamed up to vote for the top 50 black athletes, had no clue when it came to the history of the black athlete. This was a sham. Anytime you name two female gymnasts who just turned 21 in the top 10 proves that you had no clue. These young ladies were great athletes, but they are out of their league. The Monkey Survey and the Undefeated should rename themselves Monkey See, Monkey Do. The black slave was the first pro athlete. Therefore, my top 10 of the first 50 will have to be athletes who fall before, after the time constraints of 1900 to 2050. My top 10 in the first 50 years will include 4 boxers with names like Joe Gans, Jackie Johnson, Joe Louis, and Sugar Ray Robinson. Adding to that list will be Paul Robeson, Isaac Murphy, Jesse Owens, Althea Gibson, Jackie Robinson, and Josh Gibson, and not necessarily in that order. My question, where are the checks and balances in sports media? Who are the gatekeepers for our history? Is it Stephen A. Smith, Michael Wilbon, James Brown, David Aldrich, Kevin Blackstone, Bill Rhoden, Jared Bell, or Jason Whitlock? These are just a few of the names in sports media that I'm familiar with. Whitlock, for example, has no clue. I was one of the early writers for the CBS-owned Bleacher Report when Whitlock wrote a column claiming Georgetown coach John Thompson opened the doors for black coaches and black sports journalists. Nothing could have been further from the truth. The only door Thompson opened was the one he opened for himself. Whitlock recently wrote an op-ed column in the Wall Street Journal of all places titled Quarterback Colin Kaepernick is not black enough. Deadspin is a blog website, was quoted saying, "It's hard to find anything truly shocking nowadays in a world that seemingly no longer has any rules, but that an ostensibly proud and legitimate newspaper like the Wall Street Journal sees fit to regularly lend its credibility of legitimacy to the rambling thoughts of a blibbering idiot like Jason Whitlock is somehow still mind-blowing." I also found it unbelievable, but you have to look no further than ESPN's Stephen A. Smith to understand that loudmouth idiots like him and Whitlock are in demand, loud and wrong most of the time. During the weekend of the National Football League Hall of Fame activities in Canton, Ohio, I spoke with a sports columnist named Jared Bell of USA Today, no kin, whom I thought was also a friend. But in a recent telephone conversation, he said, "Man, I cannot deal with your Nixon connection." I could not believe my ears. My President Richard Nixon connection? In the late 50s, I was an all-star athlete at Spingarn High School. I was living in a D.C. Northeast housing project in a single-parent home. My mother was on welfare, but still she and my grandmother were my heroes. They did everything they could to hold the family together. But despite their efforts, my brother Earl and I were trying to go to hell in a hurry. I tried to help my mother make ends meet by caddying on the weekends at Burning Tree Golf Course in 1957, 1958. It was there I met and caddied for Richard Nixon, and the experience inspired me. I didn't see him again until 1969, shortly after he took office as the 37th President of the United States of America. I saw him on a tour of the ride-torn area on the 7th Street Northwest corridor of Cardozo Shore in D.C. I was working with youth gangs and at-risk children for the D.C. Department of Recreation and Parks. I had walked those same streets with nothing but a D.C. police badge to protect me from the random gunfire in 1968. The badge was used to get me through the police and military barricades. Shortly after his visit to the inner city, I wrote him a letter reminding him of our days at the Burning Tree Golf Course in Bethesda, Maryland. He followed up by inviting me and my wife Hattie to the White House for lunch. The luncheon led to a presidential appointment that inspired me to reach back and help thousands, not hundreds, thousands of inner city children whose lives once resembled my very own. I thank him for not forgetting who I was and where I came from, and giving me a platform and foundation to help others. President Nixon never asked me if I was a Republican or Democrat during those rounds of golf or our meeting at the White House. My visit to the White House opened the door for me to become a pioneer in radio and television sports talk shows. And my community reach back programs are now copied by the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and National Hockey League, and a host of other pro sports franchises. My brief television conversation with Bell made it sound like I was involved in the Watergate break-in. It's blacks like him who are always complaining about what white folks are doing to us. It's black men like him who need to take a look in the mirror. The media industry is overrun with spooks who sit by the door. They are there to block the door to keep other blacks out. It's black men like Jared Bell that I still end my YouTube shows with. Every black face I see is not my brother, and every white face I see is not my enemy. The only gatekeepers of our history who have a national radio or television sports platform are Shannon Sharp, Skip Bayless, Herm Edwards, Dave Aldrich, and Ryan Clark. I can count on them for an honest evaluation. It does not matter the subject. They are the only ones I will surf for with my remote. If I miss Whitlock, Smith's, or Bell's commentaries or columns, rebuttal or response to the sham of the selection of the 50 greatest athletes of all time, or how black NFL players don't have the balls to stand up and support Colin Kaepernick and the plantation mentality of NFL owners. I would hope they would add a comment so that I can apologize for the oversight. I am truly proud of my accomplishments in the community and my pioneering efforts in sports talk radio that were inspired by Richard Nixon, Red Auerbach, Bert Sugar, Harry Barnett, Brian McIntyre, Angelo Dundee, Big House Gaines, James Dudley, and Muhammad Ali. They were a diversity and rainbow of decent human beings who cared about their fellow man and believed in Harold Bell. I wonder, what is it that Jason Whitlock, Jared Bell have in their wallets? Let's close out this segment of the Legends of Inside Sports with an interview I had with NBA legend Red Auerbach as I posed the question, who does he think is the greatest black athlete of all time? Let's take a listen and see what Red had to say.
Red Auerbach, a living legend, a pioneer, innovator, Mr. Basketball, Mr. Celtic, winningest coach in the NBA, a great individual and my friend. Hello, Red.
That was some kind of introduction. And keep it up, I might believe you.
Red, who do you admire and respect in sports history?
Well, Al, you know there's so many of them, but I've always had a great deal of admiration for Jackie Robinson, Jesse Owens, and of course Bill Russell, played for me. But, you go on and on and on. I've got so many guys at the tip of my tongue. Even a guy like what John Thompson has done. Then you talk with Doug Williams. You got Julius Erving, and the great athlete Jim Brown. But you have them in all sports. And not only sports, hell, they're people. And I don't even think of it that way. I think of them as just great people and great athletes. I mean, you take Bill Russell. He's a brilliant guy. He's got a lot of depth to him. And look at John Thompson. Not only has he won and done so well as a winner, but look what he's done to the character of a lot of the kids that go to Georgetown. And we don't know, what Jackie has done as far as pioneering, but forget all that. He's just was such a great athlete. Take Jimmy Brown. He's the greatest lacrosse player in history, as well as one of the tops, if not the top, fullback that ever played a game of football.
Red, I've heard on many occasions they say that Jackie Robinson didn't even play his best sport. Baseball was not his best sport.
No, football, I think, was his best sport, although he was quite a good basketball player, too. We've had a lot of arguments as to who's the greatest athlete, all-around athlete, of all time, and it's always come back to between Jackie Robinson and Jim Brown. You know, that really has done it, not the potential.
Red, let's talk about Bill Russell, but first, a commercial break. Red, what about Bill Russell's place in sports history?
People forget. They know how great he was, but they don't realize that Russell was such a winner. He won 11 championships in 13 years. 11 championships. You're talking about winning the close ones and performing in the clutch. I mean, there's a guy that did it.
Red, thanks again for being here on Inside Sports Call. Now, thank you for your comments on one of my heroes, Jackie Robinson.
I was at this big affair for Jackie Robinson a couple of weeks ago, about a month or so ago. And I had the pleasure of sitting with Jesse Jackson and Ella Fitzgerald. And I'll tell you, that was a memorable evening. I'll never forget it. It was super.
Well, I bet, too, that they said the same thing that they were in the company of Red Auerbach, a class act and a class gentleman.
This Inside Sports Call was brought to you by the sponsor, who thanks you for your continuing support.
All right. That was my dear friend, the late NBA great, the legendary Red Auerbach. And a lot of people are not aware of Red and owner Walter Brown of the Celtics being the pioneers in civil rights in American sports history. They were the pioneers, man. They were equal opportunity employers in the NBA. The NBA as it is today, with all the black athletes making millions and millions of dollars, is because of men like Red Auerbach and Walter Brown. Let's not forget that, folks. We know how, the city of Boston has a black eye when it comes to racism in America. But you cannot count the Boston Celtics among that. Put them in that same category when it comes to racism. Man, the things that they did were unbelievable. And as we go out of here, Red talked about a whole lot of great black athletes, and several of them should be in the top 10 of the greatest of all time, in the top 50. There's no doubt about that. But John Thompson was not a great athlete. He did a great job as a coach at Georgetown, but a great athlete he was not. But Red was right on point with all the rest of those guys. He left out, of course, Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain, you start talking about the greatest basketball player of all time. It's Wilt Chamberlain, hands down, over Russell. Even Sam Jones said in one of my interviews, Wilt could have been the greatest defensive player of all time. But he didn't have the support, the teammates to support him, so he had to do everything. Wilt, they changed the game and the rules because of Wilt Chamberlain. That's how you tell about how great an athlete woman was. Can they change the game? So definitely, I just wanted to revisit the 50 greatest athletes of all time. And I thought, man, 2017 marked 50 years that I brought the first black athlete into the community with Dave Bing in 1967. Would you believe that? To quell a disturbance at Spingarn High School after a shooting. And the rest is sports media history. Well, that's going to be it for this segment of the Legends of Inside Sports. And I just want you to remember that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next time, you can color me gone.